Your son is dying and we need $200,000 for the surgery. Dr. Miller said, his words hanging in the sterile hospital air like a death sentence. The fluorescent lights above us hummed, casting harsh shadows across his face as he delivered the news that would destroy everything I thought I knew about rock bottom. My name is Mark Walker. I'm 39 years old and I work as a construction foreman in Baltimore, Maryland. I've built shopping centers, office buildings, and schools with these hands, but I couldn't build a way to save my 12-year-old son, Jake. He's the kid with the crooked smile who collects vintage coins and knows every Orioles stat from the past decade. The same kid who is now lying in a hospital bed 3 floors up, his heart failing him at an age when his biggest worry should have been making the Little League playoffs. How long does he have without the surgery? I asked, though my mouth felt like it was full of sand. 5 weeks at most. The deterioration is accelerating, Doctor. Miller adjusted his glasses, a nervous habit I'd noticed over the past 2 weeks of consultations. The procedure requires a specialist. Dr. Park at Johns Hopkins Hospital is one of only 3 surgeons in the country who performs it. The success rate is remarkable, but insurance won't cover it. I finished. We'd had this conversation before, though, each time I hoped the answer would magically change. They classify it as experimental, despite the proven results. I've written appeals, but these things take time that Jake doesn't have. I pulled out my phone with shaking fingers and called the one person who should have cared as much as I did. Lauren picked up on the 4th ring, her voice carrying that practiced cheerfulness she'd perfected since marrying Bradley Sutton and moving to her Greenwich, Connecticut mansion. Mark M. in the middle of Pilates. What is it? It's Jake. The doctors say he needs surgery or he's going to die. We need $200,000. There was a pause. I could hear her instructor counting in the background. Mark, you always were one for dramatics. Lauren, M. standing here with his doctor. This is real. Our son is dying. Has your responsibility now. That's what you wanted. Remember primary custody. You fought me for it in court. This isn't about custody. This is about saving his life. Her voice turned cold, a tone I remembered from the last days of our marriage. Bradley and I have our own expenses. The twins' education, the mortgage on the summer house. I'm sorry, but we can't just pull that kind of money out of thin air. You mean you won't his your problem now, Mark? You wanted to be the hero dad. Figure it out. The line went dead. Dr. Miller pretended to study Jake's chart, giving me the illusion of privacy in my humiliation. That's when the begging started. I called everyone. My mother, Margaret Walker, cried on the phone. Baby, if I had it, I'd sell my soul. Let me talk to Pastor Green. Maybe the church can help. The church raised $100. My brother Aaron was driving his rig somewhere outside Kansas City when I reached him. Mark, I'm 3 months behind on my mortgage. Megan's pregnant with our 3rd. I got maybe $350 I can send you. Uncle Frank, who owned rental properties across 3 states, listened to my whole plea before responding. Mark, real estate isn't liquid. These things are tied up in mortgages and partnerships. I could maybe free up $12,000 in a few months. He doesn't have months, Frank. I'm sorry, kid. I really am. I stood outside grocery stores with a poster board sign and Jake's school picture enlarged at FedEx office. Please help save my son, it read. People walked past like I was invisible. One woman dropped $1 in my cup. A teenager took a selfie with me in the background, probably for some social media post about desperation in America. The hospital billing department was staffed by people trained to deliver devastating news with professional smiles. Mr. Walker, we need half the amount up front before we can schedule the procedure. I understand this is difficult, but policy is policy. I set up a crowdfunding page with a title that made me want to vomit. Help save Jake. Dying 12-year-old needs heart surgery. After 2 weeks, we'd raised $3,560, mostly from coworkers and poker buddies. but it was the hospital janitor named Walter Hayes, a man everyone ignored as he pushed his mop bucket through the halls, who would write a check that would save my son's life. And the 4 words he would speak to me in that hospital chapel would reveal a truth about loss, love, and redemption that still makes me question everything I thought I knew about miracles. Life wasn't supposed to end up this way. 3 years after the divorce, I'd finally found my rhythm as a single dad. Jake and I had built something good together in our 2-bedroom apartment above the Sunrise Bakery on Harbor Avenue. The place smelled permanently like fresh bread and coffee, and Jake claimed it was better than any alarm clock. Every Saturday morning, we had our tradition at Patty's Diner 2 blocks down. Jake would slide into the red vinyl booth and order the same thing without looking at the menu. Chocolate chip pancakes with extra whipped cream and a side of bacon burned just a little too much. "Dad, you think the Orioles will finally get their act together this year?" He'd ask, syrup already dripping down his chin. I'd hand him a napkin and launch into my analysis of their pitching rotation, while he nodded seriously like we were sports commentators preparing for broadcast. Those were the good days, the days when being broke didn't matter, because we had our routines, our inside jokes, and a kitchen table where we'd spread out his vintage coin collection every Sunday afternoon. This one's from 1943, he'd explain, holding up a wheat penny. They made some out of steel that year because they needed copper for the war. Mr. Friedman at the coin shop says it could be worth something someday. My ex-wife Lauren had married Bradley Sutton exactly 14 months after our divorce was finalized. I'd met him once during a custody handoff, all handmade Italian shoes, and a watch that cost more than I made in 3 months. He owned a pharmaceutical company or invested in one or something that involved making money off sick people. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now I need her. Lauren had told me 6 months ago when she started missing her weekend visits with Jake. Bradley's twins need stability. They're at a difficult age. The twins were 8. Jake had been 7 when she walked out on us, but apparently that had been different. "Mom doesn't want me anymore, does she?" Jake had asked after she canceled for the 4th straight weekend. "She loves you, buddy. She's just busy figuring things out. You don't have to lie, Dad. I'm 12, not stupid." My mother, Margaret Walker, tried to fill the void Lauren left. She'd take the bus from Staten Island every Wednesday to cook dinner for us, arriving with grocery bags full of ingredients for pot roast or shepherd's pie. "That boy needs meat on his bones," she'd declare, commandeering our small kitchen. She'd been a seamstress for 40 years before the arthritis got too bad, and now she lived on Social Security checks that barely covered her rent. My older brother Aaron had his own struggles. 3 kids, a mortgage underwater since 2008, and a wife named Megan, who worked double shifts at the hospital just to keep them afloat. He drove trucks for a living, gone 2 weeks out of every month, calling me from rest stops to check in. "You're doing good," Mark had say. "Better than I would if Megan left me with the kids." Uncle Frank was the success story of the family, or so everyone thought. Had gotten into real estate in the 90s, bought low sold high, and now owned rental properties from Maryland to Virginia. He drove a Mercedes and lived in a house with a circular driveway. But success is relative, and I'd learned that having money and having accessible money were 2 very different things. The construction job kept us stable. I'd been foreman for Brennan Construction for 6 years, overseeing crews that built strip malls and office complexes. It was honest work that left me exhausted enough to sleep at night, despite the worry that always hummed in the background of single parenthood. My buddy Big Mike worked alongside me, a mountain of a man who'd done 2 tours in Iraq and never talked about it. "You're doing all right, brother," he'd tell me when he caught me staring at nothing during lunch breaks. Everything changed that Tuesday morning in April. I was reviewing blueprints at the job site when my phone rang. Coach Harris' name flashed on the screen. "Mark, you need to get to Baltimore General Hospital now." "What happened?" Jake collapsed during practice. "Just dropped like someone cut his strings. The ambulance is taking him now. I don't remember the drive to the hospital. I don't remember parking or running through the emergency room doors. I just remember seeing my son on a gurney, his face the color of old newspaper wires attached to machines that beeped with algorithmic indifference. His vintage Orioles cap was clutched in his hand, the one I'd bought him for his birthday last year. That was the moment my old life ended, and this nightmare began, though I didn't know yet about Walter Hayes, the janitor who would become our unlikely savior. The diagnosis hit like a sledgehammer to the chest. Dr. Miller sat across from me in a consultation room that smelled like disinfectant and despair, sliding medical charts and test results across the table with practiced precision. Restrictive cardiomyopathy with rapid deterioration. He said each word carefully pronounced, as if that would help me understand why my 12-year-old son's heart was failing. In layman's terms, Jake's heart muscle has become rigid. It can't fill with blood properly, which means it can't pump effectively. The condition is advancing faster than we typically see in pediatric cases. But he was fine last month. He played 3 baseball games in 1 weekend. These conditions can accelerate suddenly. The collapse during practice was his heart's way of telling us it can't compensate anymore. Dr. Miller pulled out his tablet showing me a 3D image of Jake's heart. Without intervention, we're looking at complete heart failure within 5 weeks, possibly less. So we do the surgery. The procedure is highly specialized. Only 3 surgeons in the country are qualified to perform it. Dr. Park at Johns Hopkins Hospital has the best success rate at 85%. When can we schedule it? That's when Dr. Miller's expression shifted from clinical to sympathetic, the look that told me worse news was coming. There's the matter of payment. The hospital requires proof of payment or insurance authorization before we can book the O. I have insurance through my union. I've already spoken with them. They classify this procedure as experimental. They won't cover it. How much? $200,000. The number hung between us like a physical barrier. I made decent money as a construction foreman, but decent money meant I could pay rent, buy groceries, and maybe save a few hundred a month if nothing went wrong. Something had gone catastrophically wrong. I called Lauren from the hospital parking lot, pacing between cars while trying to keep my voice steady. She answered on the 4th ring, classical music playing in the background. Mark M. hosting Bradley's business partners for dinner. Can this wait? Jake's dying. He needs surgery that costs $200,000 or he has 5 weeks to live. I heard her walk into another room, the music fading. You're exaggerating. I'm standing outside Baltimore General Hospital with his test results in my hand. His heart is failing. Lauren has our son. Mark Bradley and I have financial obligations. The twins' private school is $32,000 a year each. We just bought the house in the Hamptons. These aren't liquid assets. Sell something. Borrow against something. I don't care how you get it. It's not that simple. Bradley's money is tied up in investments and trust funds for the twins' future. What about Jake's future? Her voice turned cold, the tone I remembered from the divorce proceedings. You wanted primary custody. You fought me for it. Said I was an unfit mother. Well, congratulations, Mark. You won. Here's your responsibility now. This isn't about custody. This is about saving his life. I can't help you. I'm sorry, but I can't. The call ended. I stood there holding my phone, watching a woman push her healthy child across the parking lot in a wheelchair, probably heading home after something minor and fixable. I called my mother next. She was watching Jeopardy when she answered, and I could hear Pat Sajak's voice in the background before she muted it. When I told her everything, she started crying. Baby, I have maybe $3,000 in savings. It's yours. All of it. Let me call Pastor Green. The congregation can help. The church raised $2,100 over 2 weeks of special collections. My brother Aaron was somewhere outside Kansas City when I reached him. Jesus, Mark, how is this even possible? Kids don't just get heart conditions. Apparently they do. I'm behind on everything. Megan's pregnant again and we just found out it's twins. I can send you maybe $350. I called Uncle Frank last, the family success story, who owned properties across 3 states. He listened without interrupting, then sighed heavily. Mark, real estate doesn't work like that. Everything's leverage tied up in mortgages and partnerships. To free up that kind of cash would take months of restructuring. He doesn't have months, maybe $12,000. I could get you $12,000 in a few weeks. I set up the crowdfunding page that night, typing and retyping the description until I couldn't see through the tears. Help save Jake. Dying 12-year-old needs heart surgery. After 2 weeks, we'd raised $3,560, mostly from guys on my construction crew and drinking buddies from O'Malley's bar. I stood outside grocery stores with a sign watching people actively avoid eye contact. One man muttered, "Get a job," as he passed. A teenager took my picture, probably for some poverty porn social media post. After 6 hours, I'd collected $43 in loose change and crumpled bills. The hospital billing coordinator delivered the final blow with a practiced smile. "Mr. Walker, we need half the amount up front before we can schedule the procedure." 2 weeks had passed since the diagnosis, and Jake was dying in front of my eyes. His skin had taken on this grayish tone that made him look like a ghost of the kid who used to steal bacon off my plate at Patty's Diner. The circles under his eyes had deepened to purple, and he'd lost 13 cloisons from an already small frame. "Dad, am I going to die?" he asked one evening as I sat beside his hospital bed. The Orioles were playing on the TV mounted to the wall, but neither of us was watching. "No, buddy. Dad's going to figure this out. Mom hasn't visited. She's busy sport. She doesn't care about me anymore, does she?" The words sat heavy in my throat. I wanted to lie to protect him from one more hurt, but he deserved better than false hope about his mother. "I don't know what's going on in her head, Jake, but I care. Grandma Margaret Walker cares. Uncle Aaron calls every day asking about you. That's not the same as having a mom who shows up." He was right, and we both knew it. I held his hand, feeling how cold his fingers had become, how the bones seemed too prominent under his skin. The heart monitor beeped its mechanical rhythm, counting down time we didn't have. That night I couldn't stay in his room. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the sound of those machines made me want to punch through windows. I wandered the hospital halls, eventually finding myself in the chapel on the first floor. It was 2:00 a.m., and the space was empty except for 6 rows of pews and a simple wooden cross on the wall. I hadn't prayed since I was 12 years old, the day my grandfather died, and God didn't answer my desperate bargaining. But desperation has a way of bringing you to your knees, literally. I found myself on the worn carpet, hands clasped like a child reciting bedtime prayers. "Please," I whispered to whoever might be listening. "Not my boy. Take me instead. Take whatever years I have left and give them to him. Please. He'll do anything. He'll believe anything. Just don't take my son." The door creaked open behind me. I expected a priest or maybe a nurse coming to offer hollow comfort. Instead, Walter Hayes shuffled in with his mop bucket, the wheels squeaking against the linoleum just outside the carpeted chapel area. I'd seen him around the hospital every night, pushing that bucket through the halls with the steady rhythm of someone who'd been doing the same route for years. Gray hair, thick glasses that looked like they came from the 1980s, always wearing the same faded blue janitor's uniform with his name embroidered on the pocket. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his voice gravelly but gentle. I shrugged, too exhausted to care about privacy anymore. Walter lowered himself onto the pew beside me with the careful movements of someone whose joints had seen too many years of physical labor. He didn't speak at first, just sat there looking at the cross on the wall. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, though. It felt like sitting with someone who understood that sometimes words were useless. "Couldn't help but notice you've been here every night," he finally said. 2 weeks straight. Same time, same pew. Can't sleep. My son's upstairs dying. I know. Heard the nurses talking. Jake, right? The boy who keeps asking about Orioles scores. I nodded, surprised he knew that detail. Good kid, polite. Always says thank you when I empty his room's trash. Not many do that. We sat in silence for another moment before Walter spoke again, rubbing his weathered hands together. Lost my boy too, Matthew. Leukemia 22 years ago next month. I'm sorry. Worst part was having the money for treatment, but getting it too late. By the time I could pay for the experimental therapy, cancer had spread everywhere. Doctors said even if we'd had it 5 weeks earlier, might have made the difference. That's awful. What about Jake's mother, she helping? A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. She's got a new family now. New husband with money, but apparently not for Jake. Says he's my responsibility. Walter's jaw tightened. Some people don't deserve the gifts they're given. I've tried everything. Family, friends, strangers on the street. Set up one of those online fundraising things. I've got maybe 8,000 total and I need $200,000. Might as well need $1 million. Walter stood up slowly, reaching into his janitor's uniform pocket. He pulled out a leather checkbook worn around the edges but obviously expensive. The kind of thing that looked completely out of place in a janitor's hands. How much did you say, $200,000? Why? Walter didn't answer. He just opened the checkbook and started writing his pen, moving deliberately across the check. Walter's pen moved across the check with careful precision, each stroke deliberate and measured. When he tore it from the checkbook and handed it to me, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. The amount was clear. $200,000. The signature read, Walter Hayes, in neat practiced cursive. This is some kind of sick joke, I said, holding the check like it might burst into flames. No joke, son. You're a janitor. You mop floors. You empty trash cans. That's right. How could you possibly have this kind of money? Walter reached into his wallet, a worn leather thing held together with a rubber band, and extracted a yellowed newspaper clipping. He unfolded it carefully like it was made of tissue paper and handed it to me. The headline read, Local Inventor Sells Medical Device Patent for $5.0 million. The black and white photo showed a younger Walter, maybe 40 years old, shaking hands with executives in expensive suits. The caption identified him as Walter Hayes, inventor of a revolutionary cardiac monitoring component. That's you. Different lifetime, but yes. I stared at the check, then back at the newspaper clipping, then at Walter's face. I don't understand. If you have millions, why are you working as a janitor at Baltimore General Hospital? Walter sat back down, his movements heavy with more than just age. After Matthew died, my wife Diane couldn't handle the grief. She followed him 5 months later. Doctor said it was a heart attack, but I know better. She died of a broken heart. Suddenly, I had $5 million and nobody to spend it on. The money felt like blood on my hands, like 30 pieces of silver for failing my family. But you didn't fail them. You tried everything. Too little, too late. The patent sale went through 3 weeks after Matthew's funeral. 3 weeks. He shook his head. I gave most of it away. Children's hospitals, research foundations, families I read about in the newspaper kept enough to live on, took this job because I needed to be useful, needed to be around families fighting the same fight we lost. Maybe I could help in small ways. Bring them coffee, keep their rooms clean, listen when they needed to talk. Walter, I can't take this. It's too much. You can and you will. I'll pay you back every penny. It might take me 20 years, but I'll pay you back. I don't want your money, Mark. Money's never been anything but numbers on paper to me since Matthew died. Then why? Why would you do this for strangers? Walter looked me straight in the eye, and I saw 22 years of grief pooled there. Grief that had crystallized into something else, something purposeful. Because 22 years ago I sat in this same chapel in that exact spot where you were kneeling, begging for a miracle that never came. Because your ex-wife walking away from that boy is the same as the world walking away from my Matthew. Everyone had excuses then, too. The insurance company, the hospital, the specialists who wouldn't see us without upfront payment. He paused, seeming to gather himself for what came next. Because every night for 2 decades I've wondered why I survived when my boy didn't. Why I was given wealth when it was too late to matter. Maybe this is why. Maybe I've been pushing this mop through these halls for 14 years just to be here right now for you and Jake. Walter, I don't know what to say. There's more, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. 3 nights ago I had a dream. First time I dreamed of Matthew in 5 years. He was standing right there. Walter pointed to the spot near the chapel's small altar. He was wearing his Little League uniform, the one we buried him in. He pointed to this pew and said, "Dad, he'll be there Tuesday night. Help him. Do for him what you couldn't do for me." The rational part of my brain wanted to dismiss this as grief-induced fantasy. But sitting in that chapel at 2:00 a.m., holding a check that would save my son's life, rationality seemed like the least important thing in the world. "Then Tuesday night there you were," Walter continued. "Same spot Matthew pointed to your boy upstairs, dying of a heart condition, needing money for surgery, just like we needed money for treatment. The parallels were too perfect to be coincidence." I looked down at the check again, my hands shaking. "You said Matthew told you 4 words that shattered your world. What were they?" Walter stood up, preparing to return to his mop and bucket. He looked back at me with eyes that held galaxies of pain and purpose mixed together. "Matthew sent me here." The words hung in the chapel air like a physical presence, like something sacred and impossible and absolutely true all at once. The surgery was scheduled within 36 hours. I handed the check to the billing department at 8:00 a.m. when they opened, watching the coordinator's eyes widen as she processed the amount. Dr. Miller couldn't hide his surprise when she called him down to confirm. "How did you manage this, Mr. Walker?" A miracle was all I said, because how else could you explain Walter Hayes? The morning of the surgery, Walter was there mopping the hallway outside the operating room. He looked up as they wheeled Jake past on the gurney. My son was scared, but trying to be brave, his Orioles cap clutched in his hands. "You're going to be fine, young man," Walter said, pausing his work. "I feel it in these old bones." "Are you the janitor my dad told me about? The one who helped us? I just cleaned floors, son. Your dad's the hero here." Jake looked at Walter for a long moment, then held out his Orioles cap. "Will you hold this for me? Dad says you're good luck." Walter took the cap with hands that trembled slightly. "I'll guard it with my life." 7 hours later, Dr. Miller emerged from the O with the words, "I'd been praying for. Complete success. Jake's going to make a full recovery. His heart function is already improving." I found Walter in the chapel that night, sitting in the same pew where everything had changed. "How do I ever repay you?" "You don't repay me. You pay it forward. Someday, somehow, you'll find someone who needs help the way you needed it. That's how Matthew's gift keeps moving through the world. Walter, I need to understand something. Do you really believe Matthew sent you to me?" He was quiet for a moment, considering his words. "I believe love doesn't die when people do. I believe my boy knew I needed purpose as much as your boy needed surgery. Whether that's Matthew reaching from heaven or just an old man's way of making sense of loss, does it matter? The result is the same. Jake lives." Lauren finally showed up a week after the surgery, arriving in her Mercedes, wearing designer sunglasses she didn't remove even in the hospital room. Mark Y heard what happened. Some janitor paid for everything. That's insane. His name is Walter, and he saved the life of the son you abandoned. I didn't abandon him. I just couldn't liquidate assets that quickly. Walter appeared in the doorway with his mop bucket right on cue for his evening rounds. He looked at Lauren with eyes that held no judgment, just infinite sadness. "Ma'am, you should leave. The boy doesn't need apologies or excuses. He needs people who show up when it counts, not when it's convenient. Lauren's face flushed red. Who are you to tell me anything about my son? I'm the janitor who loves your boy more than you do, and that should make you ashamed. She left without saying goodbye to Jake. Today, Jake is 16 and healthy. His heart beats strong and regular, pumping life through a body that's grown tall and athletic. He made varsity baseball as a sophomore, and every game he plays, Walter is there in the stands, still wearing his janitor uniform because he comes straight from work. Jake volunteers at the hospital every weekend, bringing coffee and sandwiches to families in the cardiac unit waiting room. He knows their fear intimately, knows the weight of watching someone you love slip away while you're powerless to help. Someone helped us, he tells them. You're not alone in this. Walter still pushes his mop bucket through those halls, still empties trash cans and cleans up messes, but I know the truth now. I've seen him slip checks to desperate families, always when he thinks no one is watching. The overnight nurse told me he's done it at least a dozen times in the past 5 years. Can't help everyone. Walter told me once when I caught him leaving an envelope on a crying mother's chair while she was in the bathroom. But Matthew keeps sending me the ones I can. Last month, Jake got his first job at a sporting goods store. When he got his first paycheck, he immediately put half in a savings account for someone else's miracle fund. Dad, like Walter, taught us. We pay it forward. The check Walter wrote hangs framed in our living room, not as a monument to money, but as a reminder of grace. In the memo line, Walter had written, "For Matthew's friend he never got to meet. Some people leave you money in their will." Walter Hayes taught me something worth infinitely more. Miracles wear janitor uniforms, angels push mop buckets, and love transcends even death itself, reaching through dreams and years of grief to save strangers' children. Sometimes when I'm stuck in traffic or dealing with a difficult day at work, I think about Walter still mopping those floors, still watching for the next parent, praying in that chapel. He's there because Matthew sends them to him, or because he needs to believe Matthew sends them. And in the end, there's no difference at all. The broken heart of a janitor saved my son's failing heart. And that's the kind of mathematics that makes me believe in something bigger than all of us. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below about a time when an unexpected person made a difference in your life. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in humanity. Remember, sometimes angels come dressed as janitors and miracles hide in the most ordinary.